I mean, look, my work is autobiographical enough, and I don't think people actually understand that, like, a lot of the roles that I played, there's so much of me in there. They just don't have context as to where that's coming from or why. And I kind of like it that way. You know, I mean, there's a lot that's mine that I still hold on to. People were surprised when I chose to be an actor because when I was a kid, they always said I was a director. I was directing my friends when we played as kids. So it was nice to get back to that. The town I grew up in, Mount Lebanon, I love it with all my heart. I missed so much. It was so great. It was like the ideal best place to raise a kid. The high school was incredible. We were top 5 in the country. The whole community is built around just getting kids great educations. And so, you know, I got to go to school there. All the kids around me went off to great colleges to do great things. And I got to go to a great college to do what I want. So there was just so much opportunity there. It was so safe. People could leave the keys, and my mother would leave the keys in the car at night, leave the door unlocked. Like there just wasn't crime. Like you'd leave on your bike in the morning, you wouldn't come back until night. You know, it was kind of like Stranger Things without all the monsters and craziness. But, you know, it was a really idyllic childhood where anything I wanted to do, I could do. Anything I could come up with, the high school had some sort of club or TV studio. I made my own films. That's how I got into acting, was through making my own movies, and I wouldn't have been able to do that somewhere else at that time unless I had the equipment. So it was just, I'm so lucky to have that. But I also, like, you know, I was the captain of 3 sports teams. You know, I was on the honor roll. I did well on my SATs. I was in the theater club. I made my own movie. You know, like I was always busy. So I guess, like, you know, what was high school like? I was super busy. I knew that there was something in me beyond sports. There's another side to me, and if I went to college for sports, it was only going to be to get into a better school. I just wasn't looking to pursue a career in professional sports or even collegiate. I wanted to get in. I wanted to get in quickly to what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And when I really looked at what was realistic for me, I just thought I could do this. Like I could, you know, and I had made enough of my own movies, like I said, that kind of nudged me like in that direction. Like you could do this, and it was enough to satiate the artist in me, but not enough. So that's why I wound up, 10 years ago, I turned back to producing, I turned back to writing, I turned back to all the stuff that really excited me when I was younger. So I've kind of come full circle in a way. You know, it wasn't that I didn't learn anything about acting, you know, playing Captain Morgan drunk at a bar at age 16 through 21. You know, I mean, there was no work-related research going on during any of that. Let me just be clear. I worked in bars from the time that I was 16, and then that turned into working in clubs as a bouncer, as a doorman, bodyguard. That was where you get an education in humans, because you're at a club every night and you're watching the animals do their thing in the wild from a perch high above, and they're not thinking you're looking at them, but you're seeing everything. So night after night, you're watching that game. And I think I learned a lot about men and women, men and men, women and women. You learn a lot about just people in general, especially when they're inebriated. And so, you know, that was kind of a grad school education in human behavior, which then becomes applicable to acting later on. Acting for me is, I'm capable of anything. Capable of anything. So what do I have inside of me that understands that person, that character? Before Magic Mike 2, I wound up directing and producing a documentary about a male stripper in Texas who boasted to be the oldest living male stripper in the world. And he was 55 years old at the time. His name was Randy the Master Blaster. And he danced at this club in Dallas. And so I just heard these like outlandish stories about him and the other guys at the club. And so my brother and I had just started our production company And that was like, we could shoot this right away if I was willing to self-finance it, to finance it. So we just flew down to Dallas and just started shooting. So I guess you could throw that into the research file for part 2, because I did have to be there for all of that, because I was directing it. I love working with my brother. I love working with somebody who I've known that long, who has the same taste as me, and we don't have to be afraid to tell each other our opinions, real opinions, which sometimes is difficult to do at work in the entertainment industry. So it's great having somebody there like that you can talk to. 359 is a reference to Roger Bannister, who was the first human to run a mile in under 4 minutes. And when I read and somebody told me a little bit about it, and then I started reading about it, and it just, the principle behind it really struck me and stayed with me for many years, where, for thousands of years, the Romans created the mile, and no one could run in under 4 minutes. It just was like this impossible barrier. And it lasted from ancient Rome all the way to the 1950s. And it was just, human beings are only so fast. This is how fast they could run, that's it. And this British physician came up with a training method where he, the mile is 4 laps around a track for track runners on a standard track. So he found 4 runners that could run a lap in under a minute. And he would train against all 4 of them in a row. And all 4 of them would try to beat him, on their lap. And eventually he got to the point where he did break it. He broke it in an official time. And what was more extraordinary than him breaking it was the fact that within a few months, someone else broke his record. So after thousands of years, it took one person to say, the impossible is possible, then someone else did it, because mentally that barrier was gone. And then after that, within a couple of years, people smashed his record. And now the record's like 3:47. I mean, high school kids run under 4 minutes. So the idea that like breaking a giant undigestible task down into bits and parts, and you can then attack each part in succession, you can wind up climbing this mountain if you just look at it, if you can break it into pieces. And I find that applicable to like everything but I think even more, especially today with like, nothing great ever happened with instant gratification. So, being able to look at a huge task and break it into pieces is kind of like how I attack life. So I just thought I would name the company that. I mean, I think every person in entertainment kind of thinks about the day when they don't need the business anymore and they could just say everything they want to about everybody. But when that time is, I have no idea, and I don't know that there will ever be an appropriate time to do that. But oh boy, like I know everybody thinks that their life should be a reality show or a documentary, but like, let me tell you something, like I've seen stuff that I think people would like to read about.